Manhunt 2 coming to a screen near you. It is a new video game full of brutal killings. It's so vicious that the UK just banned it. Well, should we outlaw it too, or let the free markets decide if it lives or dies?
American stores tomorrow, and it's making a lot of noise. There's an international outcry against it. Manhunt 2 is so violent, it's been banned in Britain. In fact,
released in North America in October of 2007, officially under the M rating, Manhunt 2 was the official sequel to Rockstar North's 2003 survival horror Manhunt. Manhunt 2, like its predecessor today, is seen as a cult classic. While never reaching the massive success of the GTA series, the Manhunt series still retains a large fan base, and much like the GTA series, it would harbor its own critics. There are few games that garner so much negative press than Manhunt 2.
Manhunt 2 has been the target of criticism since its release a week ago. Now Target is doing something about it. The Minnesota-based retailer stopped selling the game today, and Jason DeRush explains what it is about this game and why another local chain is keeping it on the shelves.
The ill-fated sequel would have a larger role in once again stirring up the controversy regarding the depiction of violence in video games. It would cause many influential figures not to only question the practices of Rockstar and Take-Two Interactive, but also organizations responsible for rating games. It's easy to point out the hypocrisy when labeling games like Manhunt 2 a simple murder simulator, when in fact most popular forms of entertainment incorporate violence to some degree or more. What many people don't realize is that Manhunt 2 was able to push the boundaries of video game violence so much that it called to question the practices of the ESRB and its rating system on a national level. In this retrospective, we dive into the controversy which was Manhunt 2. And hey, if you like these kinds of videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel.
Now, critics say there are images of axe killings, mutilations, even castration from a pair of pliers.
Children are a protected class in this country. You can't sell pornography to children. The game is unsold to children, Jack.
And we know from all the studies at University of Santa Barbara that what you got to do is when you have malicious behavior, you got to refute it immediately.
Right, you shouldn't be practicing it and encouraging it in a video game. But
Danny, listen, it's a manhunt, and they won't stop until we're both dead.
Given the backlash that Manhunt 2 would provoke through 2007 to 2008, one might wonder if this game was even worth being created or released. The development behind Manhunt 2 is strange compared to other Rockstar games. Manhunt 2 had been in creation since the release of Manhunt in 2003. The project would be handed to Rockstar Vienna while Rockstar North would handle GTA San Andreas. But for some unknown reason, the Vienna office was closed on May 11, 2006, and all the developers in the Vienna office who had worked on Manhunt 2 were later reinstated into Rockstar North. Unfortunately, these same developers would go unmentioned in the final credits of Manhunt 2. This was a list of over 50 people who Rockstar did not acknowledge. And with the closing of the studio, all progress on Manhunt 2 had come to a steady halt. Then out of nowhere, in the beginning months of 2007, Rockstar announced that Manhunt 2 would be released that very summer for the PlayStation 2, PSP, and Nintendo Wii. Rockstar would end up devying the final touches to the game among the three studios: Rockstar London, who would handle the PlayStation 2 version of Manhunt 2, Rockstar Toronto, who would handle the Nintendo Wii version, and Rockstar Leeds, who will handle the PSP version. Around February 2007, when the first trailer was made available on the internet, is when the real trouble surrounding the game loomed. And most of it stemmed from the fact that Manhunt 2, a game that emphasized killing, was being featured on the kid-friendly Nintendo Wii console, a game console with motion controllers. Unlike the PlayStation 2 or PSP version, the Wii would have players performing the physical motions of the character during the execution. Many took this game mechanic as simple overkill for Rockstar. And yeah, I could see that. Most could. Rockstar had always been a company that pushed the boundaries of graphic violence in video games. but Manhunt 2 seemed like a step too far in the wrong direction. It only seemed to add fuel to the fire, which was the media storm on graphic violence.
It doesn't work out well. Let me just rush on because I want to ask you something. Those full screens we had with the guy with the axe over his head and with the hammer over his head.
Awful.
Just again, so our viewers know, there will be kids playing this game. They will have the axe. They will be holding the axe and bringing it down on their victim. That's how this will work when played on Wii.
A fire which Rockstar had been honestly kindling since 2001. While Manhunt 2 was in development, Florida State Attorney Jack Thompson publicly announced his bid to see the game banned in the nation. Now, if you follow games media or even watch this channel, you'll have some vague recollection of Jack Thompson's career. This was the same lawyer who led several class action lawsuits against Sony, Take-Two Interactive, and several other major retail giants between 2003 and 2007. By 2007, Take-Two finally had enough of Thompson. After the announcement of Manhunt 2, Take-Two actually filed a lawsuit against Thompson, seeking to permanently keep Thompson from filing any more public nuisance actions against their companies. The basis of the suit centered on Thompson's lawsuits violating the company's First Amendment rights. This suit was settled on April 19, 2007. With Thompson agreeing not to seek any legal restrictions, along with not seeking to get the game banned. But that didn't exactly keep Jack on the fence for too long. As I stated before, much of Manhunt 2's controversy lay in the fact that the game was being ported to the Nintendo Wii console, a console in which the majority of games were marketed as kid and family friendly. To have a game as mature as Manhunt 2 on the console was seen as, well, shocking. Within June of 2007, Manhunt was less than a month from being released worldwide. But when trying to get an actual official rating to release the game in their biggest markets, the United States and the UK, both the ESRB of the United States and the BBFC of the UK would prevent the game from being released with an official rating. Under the ESRB, Manhunt 2 was given an adults-only rating, which prevented Rockstar from releasing the game on Sony or Nintendo consoles, since neither companies would allow adult-rated games to be released on their systems. In the UK, the BBFC, that's the British Board of Film Classifications, they flat out rejected the game altogether. As stated by David Cook, the director of the BBFC, Manhunt 2 is distinguishable from recent high-end video games by its unrelenting bleakness and callousness of tone and overall game context, which constantly encourages visceral killing with exceptionally little alleviation or distancing. In more simple terms, the game was banned due to killing being the main objective of the game. The BBFC further implied in Cook's statement that playing Manhunt 2 on either platform would involve a reign of unjustifiable harm risk to both adults and minors. And with that, Rockstar had to make the required changes in order to get the proper rating. The same could not unfortunately be said for other countries where the game released, such as Germany and New Zealand, where Manhunt 2 was flat out banned. Fans of the series in both the UK and the United States had to wait while Rockstar did the required censorship and revisions of the game. This is where we get the neutering of Manhunt 2, which is funny because there actually is a castration scene in the game. However, this wasn't exactly the case. Yes, Rockstar was forced to remove several weapons and executions, but regardless of which version you play, the game is still pretty violent. The executions are purposely filtered or distorted, but they don't really take away from the game all that much. Now in hindsight, Manhunt 2 wasn't really that more violent than a lot of other current or past video games. But at the time it came out, Rockstar and Take-Two were still facing the fallout from the GTA San Andreas scandal involving the hot coffee mod. Going back real fast to 2005, this is the mod which Rockstar really had nothing to do with. It was used in the PC version of GTA San Andreas to unlock a hidden sex minigame. It was due to this scandal that the ESRB, who originally gave the game a M rating, was forced to recall the game and give it a adults only rating. It forced the Federal Trade Commission to take an oversight over the rating system of the ESRB and even led to the proposal of the Family Entertainment Protection Act, which would have prompted all adult video games to be treated in the same light as alcohol and tobacco. Now here we are again in 2007, and the ESRB is once again dealing with another one of Rockstar's controversial games. The ESRB this time were not taking any chances with Rockstar. And around this time, while Manhunt 2 was being censored, there were more mentions being made of the 2004 murder case involving teenager Warren LeBlanc, reenacting the hammer execution from the original Manhunt, and the killing of 14-year-old Stefan Pacaran. After this incident, Rockstar and Take-Two were sued by the family of Stefan Pacaran for damages, and leading the lawsuit was Jack Thompson, who was demanding an egregious amount of money. It was in this case that the British Board of Film Classifications would support Rockstar and argue in favor that Manhunt 2 had no impact on the murder. Of course, that only makes the situation much more confusing in 2007. When Manhunt 2 was under review, the BBFC rejected the game not once, but twice. The game was unrated for almost an entire year before it was released. It would accumulate to Rockstar appealing to the Video Appeals Committee November of 2007 to overturn the second decision of the BBFC. By December of 2007, the Video Appeals Committee overruled the BBFC's ban. In turn, the BBFC would then take the Video Appeals Committee to the High Court at the Royal Courts of Justice, claiming that they were actually misinterpreting the Video Recordings Act of 1984. And with that, the VAC would have to review their findings once again to determine if Manhunt 2 would have a devastating impact on society, as that was part of the criterion for the law under the Video Recordings Act of 1984. But after reviewing the game again, the Video Appeals Committee still ruled in favor of the game. After all the trouble and censoring, Manhunt 2 would be released in October of 2007 in the United States and October of 2008 in the UK. The game would sell remarkably well considering that it was a sequel for a game over 3 years old by this point. But the fact that it came out on multiple platforms for a cheap price made many people, including me, consider purchasing it. Their overall censoring of the game itself would accumulate to over $1 million for Rockstar. And with all that trouble that went into releasing the game, did Manhunt 2 actually live up to its predecessor?
The premise of the video game is you're escaping from an insane asylum and you are basically killing people on your way out. Now, it's got the same amount of blood and sort of violence as some other games that are out there, but there are critics who say it goes a little bit further.
About alienating gamers with an AO rating, but aren't there gamers out there who want to play adult-only games?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the gamers are getting older. You know, I grew up playing games and now I'm older. I'm 27 and this is what I want to play. I want to go even further and see how far these games can go. Look, I'm used to just like shooting and no blood, and then blood started coming out, and now I really want to get into this gore.
Star, we're talking about Manhunt 2. It's no secret that this game is very controversial. It's definitely met some trials and tribulations on the way to being published.
Unlike the original Manhunt, Manhunt 2 actually had a solid story. Rockstar North drew inspiration for Manhunt from sources like The Greatest Game Ever and The Running Man. But in this case, the developers Rockstar Vienna pulled from a different source, The Majorian Candidate, a 1959 novel written by Richard Condon. Soon after the novel was published, a film was made based on the novel starring Frank Sinatra and Lawrence Harvey. In this film, a U.S. soldier and veteran of the Korean War, Raymond Shaw, is brainwashed after his platoon is captured during the Korean War. He returns to civilian life without realizing that he was brainwashed to be a communist assassin in the internal communist conspiracy. This film came out practically at the height of the Cold War, when tensions and fears regarding the growth of communism in Eastern Europe and the East was on the rise. For all its intention, the film The Majorian Candidate was a satire on the growing societal fears of communists. Drawing on the theme of this film, Rockstar Vienna centered the story of Manhunt 2 around Dr. Daniel Lamb, a mental patient who was serving time at Dixmoor Asylum for the criminally insane. We don't know who he is, not yet anyway, and before we have a chance to even find out, there's a prison riot. It's during the riot that Daniel kills one of the nurses and we meet his friend, Leo Casper, another inmate. Both band together to escape the asylum. As we travel through the asylum, we find out a little more about Danny's past, including his role in the Pinkman Project under, well, Dr. Pinkman.
Daniel, it's not safe up here. Return to your room immediately. Resnick, escort Mr. Lamb.
The Pinkman Project was a government-sponsored weapons program involving brainwashing and mind control techniques. The goal was to create what they conceive as the perfect assassin, and unfortunately, Dr. Daniel Lamb was a participant in the study. That's all we know for now. As the plot further unfolds, we soon find out that Danny was once a member of Pinkman's team, and due to the budget cuts in the project's funding, he decided to become a test subject himself. As it turns out, Danny was implanted with what was called the Pinkman Bridge, a brain implant containing the personality and skills of a trained assassin that can be activated by a command, a similar way that Raymond Shaw from the Majorian Candidate was activated. With one command, Danny turns from nerd to professionally trained assassin. Once activated, he basically becomes another person, and this new person retains no memory of their older self. And once that assassin is activated back to the regular person, well, they retain no memory either. That means a person could commit the worst and most heinous crimes without retaining any guilt or remorse. And in that way, the government can make better killers to deal with any potential threats to national security. During the procedure, Danny is actually planted with not a professionally trained assassin, but a former serial killer, Leo Casper. Yeah, Danny's only friend who he trusts, his only companion. He's actually a deranged killer that lives in Danny's mind.
You think it's more immersive when you're actually, stabbing with the Wii controller?
There's something to be said for the voyeuristic nature of the PS2, just sort of pressing a button and getting to sit back and watch a little bit. But definitely the Wii adds, a bit to the experience, changes it up.
In Manhunt 2, you play as, well, Danny Lamb, or Leo Casper, as they're both pursued by multiple parties connected to the project. The characters travel around several large areas, ranging from the insane asylum to a strip club, brothels, and more. Around these locations, Danny and Leo must travel undetected and take out pursuers hired by the project to kill them. These hunters are indicated by the radar, and the different colors will indicate their awareness. So in Manhunt 2, the object is, not surprisingly, to kill all pursuers and transition through stages. In each area, both hunted characters can access various tools and blunt instruments to dispatch their pursuers. This is the main meat of the game, as you can imagine by now. Like in the first game, the object was to use stealth to sneak around and behind opponents and kill them. Manhunt 2 will retain the same execution mechanic where the player holds down a button a certain amount of time to perform a different level of execution. White for hasty executions that are relatively quick, yellow for violent, which included more gory executions, and red for gruesome, which included the over-the-top kills with somewhat more blood than the previous two levels. These kills were just a little bit more, well, let's say graphic. In the original version of the game, Rockstar Vienna implemented executions in the most realistic way possible. As graphic as the ones shown in the original Manhunt were, these killings were no longer that much distorted, and featured some sadistic acts and castration and head splitting on top of that. With a vast variety of tools to use, the executions are very elaborately done. The levels allow you to use environmental executions as well. These can be found on the radar indicated by skulls. The executions can be done by just walking up to a victim undetected and hitting the button command. This is not always easy as the game has improved AI, which does lack in some areas, but is generally better than the first game. Particularly by having enemies searching dark areas, these situations the player has to hit the required button command or get detected. About midway through the game, Danny uncovers more secrets regarding the Pinkman Project. The player experiences Danny's dealings with the Pinkman Project through his eyes and in Leo's. The game switches back and forth between present day and 6 years earlier when Danny first left the project. While Danny fights against the project henchmen, Leo squares off against the project's hired mercenaries and law enforcement. It's through the Leo segments of the game that we find out that Danny was put in a criminal institution for killing his wife while he was Leo and not himself, and tragically he retained no memory of killing his wife. He then stumbles upon Leo's grand scheme, and that's to burn any facet of his old life, and to take over as Leo Casper in the body of Daniel Lamb. The intention of the Pikmin project was to turn someone into a professional killer with no remorse. But Leo himself was a serial killer, a person who killed for vindictive reasons. And while the project was supposed to separate the two personalities, it didn't take into account that the personalities could maybe speak to each other.
You were right. We got him. See, you just gotta trust me, Danny.
I got a visual on the shooter!
Let's move out.
I can handle it, Leo.
The game ends with a kinda anticlimactic showdown between Danny and Leo, in which you have to use your stealth to invade Leo and inject him with a syringe. But all in all, the story was pretty good and very much entertaining. Manhunt 2 had an interesting development and release. Since Take-Two closed Rockstar Vienna in the summer of 2007, the various versions of the game were handled by Rockstar's other studios. For instance, the PlayStation version would be developed by Rockstar London, with the Nintendo Wii version being developed by Rockstar Toronto and Rockstar Leeds handling the PSP version. Essentially, all these studios had to finish this game at the last minute. Upon playing the full game, well, it was seen to be the case, as the first half of the game mixes in stealth gameplay with a small amount of gunplay scenarios. However, towards the second half of the game, most of the levels are simply duck and cover and shooting sequences. Overall, this makes the game generally easier once you get halfway through. In total, the game itself is, well, disappointingly easy. Sure, the AI is improved, but at the same time, it really isn't. As with the increased detection does show remarkable progression, but at times I did encounter the occasional bug in the gameplay. A lot of times the AI would run right past me and wouldn't pay me any mind whatsoever.
Manhunt 2 to a local gaming center and let 3 20-somethings get their hands on it. They enjoyed playing, but even these hardcore gamers recoiled at the violent imagery.
The game just looks like they made it like this just to make it controversial, just to bring something up, because there's really no reason for the amount of violence, the level of violence that was in the game.
This definitely takes the cake as probably the most violent thing I've played.
Was Manhunt 2 the most violent game ever? Compared to more modern games, it would seem not. Even by the late 2000s standards, there was nothing too horrific featured in Manhunt 2, no more horrific than the popular horror movie franchises like the Saw series or the Hostel movies. And of course, gratuitous violence in video games was nothing new, but for various reasons and circumstances, Manhunt 2 became the center, and some might argue an accumulation of attempts made by politicians and ne'er-do-wellers to roast and punish the video game industry for the promotion of violence and the making of violent video games for profit. Arguments around Manhunt would further escalate through the efforts of Senator Leland Yee of California, who around this time was a part of a larger campaign for Rockstar and Take-Two to publicly release all the changes made to the original game.
We've asked the ESRB rating board to give us the information as to how they decided to decrease that rating system. So far, we have not gotten a favorable answer.
What did they tell you?
They basically have said, just trust us.
Much like Jackie Boy, Leland was a public advocate against the game. He was especially appalled by the fact that the game would be sold for only $39.99 for the PlayStation and PSP and $29.99 for the Wii version. In November of 2007, Senator Hillary Clinton joined a larger group of senators, including Joe Lieberman of Connecticut, in directing the ESRB to review its rating system much more. In a letter written to Patricia Vance, the president of the ESRB, the senators demanded to revise or enhance the current ESRB rating system. In the letter, they referenced the BBFC in Great Britain, who had already rejected the game twice to be sold in stores. Supporting the efforts of the senators to influence ESRB was a watchdog group known as the Commercial Free Childhood. This group was founded by Dr. Susan Lin, In 2007, Lynn and other members gained media attention when trying to contact Patricia Vance and the ESRB directly to open up more communication on the revisions of Manhunt 2 and the rating system. In one article, Dr. Lynn discusses the frustrations parents had in not being able to trust the rating system. In response, the president of the ESRB, Patricia Vance, responded by stating, "This is a very clear and firm warning to the parents that the game is in no way intended for children. Publishers submit game content to the ESRB on a confidential basis. It is not simply our place to reveal specific details about the content we have reviewed, particularly when it involves a product yet to be released. What can be said is that the charges were sufficient to warrant the assignment of a M rating by our raters, rather than publicly second-guessing what is unmistakably a strong warning to parents about the suitability of a particular game for children, which presumably neither Senator Yee nor the CCFC have personally reviewed. We feel a more productive tack would be to join us in encouraging parents to take the rating seriously when buying games for their children." Basically, it's the parents' job to make sure their children aren't exposed to violent video games. And it's only the ESRB's job to simply rate the game given the content. Whether you like Manhunt 2 or not, I think everyone can appreciate the fact that Rockstar was unrelenting in getting the game rated in both the UK and the United States. Nowadays, we might not agree with everything the company has done, such as letting an entire studio of developers go uncredited for the work. But looking back at the controversy which was Manhunt 2, it really helps me appreciate the contributions that Rockstar has made to the video game industry, always pushing the boundaries of what could be shown in electronic games. This company will go down in history for their controversial titles, but primarily they should be remembered for making video games expand beyond their original fan base of young children. And although they had some less than ideal encounters with the ESRB, I believe that the Manhunt 2 controversy, along with the GTA Hot Coffee mod scandal, forced the ESRB to become more proactive and transparent in the way they rate games. Beginning in 2008, the ESRB released the document Parents' Guide to Video Games, Parental Controls and Online Safety. Within this document, the ESRB not only gave parents knowledge of the rating system, but also how to set parental controls on the 3 main consoles so consoles only play a certain rating game. The guide also took the time to educate parents on the emerging world of online gaming, particularly when it comes to protecting children from hostile people they happen to be chatting with online. The ESRB would also include a section on mods, which are labeled as downloadable pieces of content meant to be added to a game. They make it clear to the user that generated mods are not rated by the ESRB and the game maker is not responsible for their content. I found this part of the guide to be the most interesting since it was very much related to the controversy of Manhunt 2. Shortly after the release of the game, it was rumored that there was an unofficial mod on the internet that allowed hackers to remove the filters built into the game's execution scenes.
Ratings board had Rockstar Games change the first version of the game because they felt it was too violent. Target Corporation said that it pulled the game off the shelves because players are able to undo the fix, revealing the original scene.
Which was just not right. The ESRB's role in educating the public also had to do with taking the liability out of the hands of video game developers and putting more responsibility on parents. The ESRB could demand all the censorship they want, but it means nothing if parents do not make the ethical decision to monitor and control the various forms of media that children are exposed to. And at the end of the day, Manhunt 2 in all its blood-soaked glory is a reminder that parents should consider the kinds of video games their children are exposed to and pay special attention to the ratings. It's a matter of accountability. Well, that concludes this long-ass video on Manhunt 2. I know I promised a retrospective on GTA Vice City stories, and believe me, it's coming. If you're a newcomer to this channel and like what you just watched, well, make sure you hit the like button as it does help the channel. And also subscribe to stay up to date with more retrospectives and my daily live stream. This is Bob of Smoking Fiend Productions signing off. Stay beautiful out there, everyone, and thank you for watching and showing a brother some love. Peace out.
Grab the knife. You are over your victim, plunging the knife in into the victim. Grab the knife. You are over your victim, plunging the knife.
And why anyone would want to play that creepy, disturbing game is beyond me, but...
Some gamers out there. Yeah.
All right, Daniel, thanks so much.